Okay, I hope this works. Hi, everybody. I am Nicholeen Peck. I hope this is working. I hope you're all hearing me. I am so excited for you to be joining me today for this webinar about getting husbands and wives on the same page with their parenting. I don't know if there is a more commonly asked question to me than how do I get my husband on the same page? Or how do I get my wife on the same page? Because it's not just one or the other. I've seen on both sides people wanting to have a self-governing family, wanting to have a unified relationship, and feeling like the other person doesn't get it, doesn't understand what they want them to understand, or maybe has a different level of motivation. Maybe they have a different background, and so they just see things completely different anyway. We all were raised so differently, and as I said when I was talking about doing this event, we are, products of how we were raised. And when we meet somebody and we think, yep, you're the right one, and we start that relationship with them and we start that family with them, we don't usually do major research into how they're going to handle a tantrum child or an attitude problem child or a child who has such and such addiction or whatever it is. Like we don't check into that. That doesn't occur to us. And maybe it's for the best because we learn as we go, right? We're not perfect at it. And maybe if we did do all that checking, none of us would have ever had families. So in the end, let's be grateful for our blessings and let's say, you know what? Where do we go from here? And that's what I'm hoping to address today. This webinar is my New Year's gift to everyone. I'm hoping it will encourage you all to work on a resolution that you might already have, right? So this resolution of getting on the same page as a family, improving your self-government, your communications and everything, that's my particular event. So I know that we have people joining us from all over the world because I've had multiple contacts, people from South Africa going, it's going to be 1 in the morning, where I'm at, but wanting to join us, and people from Europe and from all over North America and some in South America. We've got people joining us from everywhere. And so just a big welcome to you. I don't know how fluent with teaching self-government everyone is, okay? I'm assuming the majority of people joining us today have either read the book that I'm probably the most known for, which is Parenting a House United, or maybe you've joined some of my online courses like the implementation course. Maybe some of you even hear weekly calls from me on my weekly support group where I answer people. I don't know what level of connection we've had in the past. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an effort to very briefly, because we're trying to keep this to be a shorter webinar, get everybody a little bit on the same page with what government or the concept of self-government was something that I started learning around the age of, I didn't know that's what it was called, but it became this mission of mine to control myself, to always be calm, to always be okay, to learn to conquer some of the weaknesses I had as a young person. And it happened in a very interesting way, where I had a series of experiences that were so painful and showed me the problems that I needed to fix with myself. And then I started this project of examining me and trying to turn myself into who I was supposed to be, not what happened, what the default was in every given moment. And as time went on, I started, having children and raising a family. And I had my oldest son was a very strong-willed little boy. He would have tantrums. He would throw things. He would get very angry. And I felt like I was a little in over my head. Luckily, I'd been working on controlling myself so that I was staying calm and not getting out of control, but I wasn't exactly sure how to help him. And then I had another little baby and life felt really crazy. But then we made life go even crazier at our house. And I started doing level 3 treatment care for foster teens. And so we brought youth ages 12 to 18 in our home. This happened because my husband changed careers, and It was either, do something that I could do at home and still raise my children, which I felt very strongly about, or it was I needed to leave and, figure out what else to do with children. And I just knew I needed to stay with them at that time. And I'm glad I did, because doing the foster care taught me some skills and things that were the missing pieces in how I was going to transfer information I'd been trying to apply to myself to them at very young ages. And so I started learning different skills and different ways of correcting behaviors and, ways to communicate and hold a family accountable. And in the end, when I looked at all of this, and of course I love to study all kinds of things, read books, I realized this is self-government. Like, this is that powerful thing that they say all free societies are built on, this ability that each person has to control themselves, to actually control their own destiny and not feel like they're a slave to their own emotions. So that is kind of what self-government is. My definition of self-government is being able to determine the cause and effect of any given situation and possessing a knowledge of your own behaviors so that you can control them, which means you put yourself in control. Well, that is, even though it was a lot of words I just said, easier said than done, okay? Because we have a lot of baggage, each of us, to overcome. We have habits. We have things that we've been doing longer than we've known what the term self-government means. And it takes a little bit of practice, and you know what? It's really helpful if you have support. Now, I didn't always have support, and I think that's probably a good place for us to start. So when I started doing foster care, we worked for a place that was very rigid because the youth coming into our home were very, like I said, high level. They all had things, they had acronyms attached to their files for sure. Things like ADHD, OCD, ODD, RAD. They had, sensitivity issues, anxiety issues, anger control issues, honesty issues, kleptomania, all those kinds of things coming to our home. And so it had to be very rigid. So my husband and I, when we decided to do this, we had to go through some pretty intense training. It was actually a 3-week training in the evenings for 3 weeks. And, after just the first night of that training, my eyes were just opened and I was like, whoa. This is so common sense. Everybody should be doing this. I wanted to buy any book on the subject out there. There weren't any, okay? And I tried to locate them, and I thought, well, okay, I got to get this good. And it just resonated with me so strongly. Never did I know that I would be teaching it to other people. But I remember saying to my husband, everybody should go through classes like this before they even have children. It would make it so much easier, like they'd know what they're doing. And anyway, so we started this. My husband and I did really well. He was gone a lot. He was doing school and 2 jobs, and so I was running most of it. But whenever he was there, he stepped up to the plate. He did all of the stuff that was a little out of his comfort zone because he's not as much of a, talker about problems kind of a person like I am. I'm definitely more geared toward that. And anyway, he did fantastic. And then after 4 years of doing this treatment care, we just knew that it was time to be done. We were going to be having more children and stuff like that. We needed to switch gears a little bit. He was starting a business and life had changed. Anyway, at that point, he said, oh, good. I'm so glad that we're done because I'm sick of all of this talking. And now we don't have to talk so much. And I went, no, this is forever. Haven't you seen the positive impact on our own children? Of course, we're going to keep doing this forever and ever. And he was like, no, we talk to each other plenty. We're just fine. And he literally bailed out on me right then. And I didn't know what to do. Of course, I, tried to stop myself from being overly emotional. And I thought, oh, you know what? He'll fall back into the old habit. He knows it. He knows it works. It's going to happen. It didn't. He didn't fall back into the old habit. He even stopped wanting to have any meetings. He stopped wanting to have couples talks and meetings and family meetings and the things that were holding everything together. He just kind of bailed out of. And I had to make a decision at that point. I looked at my young family and I thought, am I just going to fly by the seat of my pants? And am I going to use my husband's unwillingness to do this as an excuse for me not doing it when I don't even know a better way? What else would I do instead? And so I made this really hard choice. And I will say it was difficult because it was like going it alone. And I decided I'm doing this for me, because I know that if I don't have something to hold on to, some sort of structure, some sort of skills or something, I mean, I'm a pretty passionate person, as you might have already gathered. If you've ever heard me speak before, I probably will start losing control on my family if things get worse and worse and worse. And you know what? I'll probably blame my husband for it. I'll probably blame my out of controlness on him because he bailed. That's what's going to happen, and I can't afford to have that happen. My self-control and calmness was so valuable that I was willing to go it alone. So that's what I did. And I often tell that to people. You may have talked with me before, and I've told you that. Well, if he won't do it, worst case scenario, you got to decide what you want for you. What do you want your relationship to be? And so, that's what I did. And then I prayed. I prayed my guts out. You know, I tried to set the best example for him. And then if ever my children came complaining about dad, I would defend him. I would support him. I would try not to talk bad about him or anything like that, because that had to maintain. So even though we were going to be doing different things with the parenting, and I knew he was going to do by emotion and I was going to do by structure. And there was going to be a difference there. And I knew the children were going to end up liking me more than him. It broke my heart because I wanted them to have a strong relationship with him. But I thought, well, he'll have to learn this the hard way, maybe. I don't know what else to do. And so anyway, I'm not going to go into every detail just due to time. But over time, and over time meant about 2 years, I did it alone. And we had family meetings, and he would only show up maybe 20% of the time. But we still did it. Same time, same place, same structure. Nothing was new. And my children behaved so well for me. And we had such a beautiful, tight relationship still to this day. I still, have that beautiful strength of a relationship with my children. And my husband started to notice. He probably noticed before, but it was starting to bug him at that point that the children wouldn't do what he said when he said it. And they would for me. And finally, one day, he just kind of opened up, I guess, is what happened. And said, it'd be really nice if they would just do what I say. And so then I talked to him about what I do to get the children to do what they say. And that was the moment I'd been praying for. It was the moment his heart was finally ready. And I knew it. And I didn't say too many words. I didn't lay into him too hard because that can ruin it, right? So instead, I just said, well, maybe just try saying, I'm going to give you an instruction before you tell them what to do, because they know what that means. And he looked at me and he said, oh, it's that same stuff. And I said, yeah. He's like, okay, you know what? You're probably right. I probably should just do it. It took him 2 years to get to that. He's stubborn, okay? Our whole family is stubborn, actually. We're either stubborn for the good or, I guess, stubborn for the bad, if we're going to go stubborn. Anyway, and he never turned back. And I said, you know what? That was the most beautiful couples meeting. I said, if we had regular couples meetings, then you could get a lot more of what you want. If you want dinner at an exact time, I could try for you to have a dinner at that time. If you want us to have, more date time, more intimate time, we can have all of that stuff. And he looked at me and he's like, really? You would do that? And I said, honey, if you need that, if you want that, yeah. And he was like, whoa. Because I think he didn't realize that he could just deliberately tell his wife, honey, I need support in this, or I need this, or can you coach me in this, or whatever. And he's told me so many times, I'm going to get a little emotional about this. It's the man I love, and he is amazing. I hope if you ever want to hear him speak, he speaks at parenting mastery events. But he said to me, honey, you're my mentor. You're the person who I look to point the direction for me. And it was at that time in our life that he realized he needed a mentor and that he had chosen me to be it. It was at that moment in that day, and I'd prayed for it for 2 years. So here's the thing. Worst case scenario is where we're starting on this webinar, okay? We're going to share a whole bunch of things about people getting on the same page, and I hope you can find some things that are going to help you get to that place. In fact, I know you will. I know you'll find some things on the interviews here with the Eggersons and the Larsons today. But if it's slow coming, okay, if people are a little bit more stubborn, if it's going to take a little bit more time, don't ever think all is lost. Don't ever make an excuse that you won't get there. Life lasts a really long time. And relationships can always improve and can always change. And you never know when a person is actually looking for a mentor and you're the one that's there. So anyway, I want to introduce some of my dear friends, some new friends, some old friends that have joined with us today on this webinar. I'm assuming that I don't even need to talk too much because you're going to learn so much from these people. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep a little list of all the little points that we bring up today in this webinar, talking about getting husbands and wives on the same page. And then we'll sum it all up at the end for you, hopefully creating a nice little picture of some of the things that you can kind of do step by step. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the Larsons. So the Larsons, wave Larsons. This is Pete and Julie Larson. There they are, joining us, squishing into the camera. I appreciate that. Anyway, could you please introduce yourselves just a little bit so everybody knows a little bit about who you are? We can't hear you, so you're going to need to turn on some sound. Maybe. I can't hear you yet. No, I can see you just great, but I can't hear you. Oh, there you go. Something's happening.
I unmuted us.
Oh, you unmuted you. Okay.
Nicholeen, down at the bottom corner of your screen, there's our little portraits. You might click on them and see if the mute is there. Click on that.
Oh, there we go. There you go. There you go. Great. Thank you. So go ahead and introduce yourself, Pete and Julie. Actually, you're now kind of frozen. I wonder if we ought to do one or the other. Maybe, if we could.
I'm Julie.
Uh-oh. Oh, here they come.
Okay. Can you hear us? Are we still on? Okay, good. So we have 4 children total. One is mine from a previous marriage, and then we have 3 together. And so my older boy is 20, and then we have 2 more boys that are 14 and 12, and then a little girl that is 9 and a half. And I am a stay-at-home homeschool mom, and Pete is an attorney. Anything you want to say?
No, I'm an attorney. I historically have worked a lot and traveled a lot, but we also attended the Mastery Conference on the cruise to Mexico in early November. So we were in a stage of reluctance, but then together joined the Mastery Conference. And so we've been back from that conference for about 7 weeks.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, so you guys are actually pretty new to being on the same page with teaching self-government. Yeah, maybe you can tell us, before you guys went on the cruise to the Parenting Mastery, what were things looking like at your house? As far as your parenting styles and how you guys are working that out?
Well, I was very similar in some cases to where you had gotten to. Was I had learned about teaching self-government at a homeschool parenting conference, seeing your table, and I am a nerd like nobody's business, and I read everything. I did the entire implementation course in right over 100 days, every single night, and was so excited to tell Pete because I felt like it was something we had been looking for years. And I remember there's a little thing in the implementation course that I kept on coming back to because it asked the question, is your spouse on board? And at first I put yes. And then I remember going back and
uh-oh, we lost you there. Julie, can you hear me? We lost you.
A couple of times.
Right?
Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So go back. You said you went back to the course. So first you wrote yes, and then you went back to the course, and then it cut your audio again.
Oh, then as we were trying to implement it, I realized that he probably wasn't on board as much as I thought he was on board because the stuff wasn't really getting implemented. And so then I'd switch it to no. And at some point in time, I was like, I really wish there was a maybe button because I really had a hard time. I was like, I just don't even know what to put. This is such a big question for our marriage. Is he on board or isn't he on board? And so I would pray about it. And finally, I just recognized, like, I'm going to click the no button. He's not on board. He's not on board to the degree that I need him to be to implement this. And then I just kind of was like, I'm just between prayer, I'm just going to have to do this alone. And then somewhere along the way, we saw the trip, the cruise, the teaching self-government cruise. And I can always, he's a traveler, and I can always get him to do a trip. But I actually realized that is the best way to get his full attention. And prior to that, to answer your question, what it looked like was, even though I was doing it on my own, I was kind of resentful. I had felt like I had spent all that time and energy, and I was trying to do this, and I was going to do it on my own, but I was kind of a little bit bitter there in the weeks leading up to before we went away and got the training together. And looking back on it, I'm not sure I needed to really be bitter. I had plenty to work on for myself that I could be working on, and I've realized that, but that's where I was. I was trying to implement it, and I was kind of at the place that I wasn't really sure if he was going to come along. And then we saw the information for the cruise and was really, really hopeful, and that turned out to be amazing.
Yay. So I love that you use the term resentful, actually, because I can definitely identify that there was a part of me that felt resentful. My husband had been trained. We had used it for 4 years, and then he bailed on me. And I thought, oh, and it is a lot to overcome that. And there is a reason that women start feeling resentful, actually. For me, I know I felt resentful because I wanted my husband to lead my family, you know?
Right.
And he actually mistakenly thought, due to modern ideas about women or whatever, and then I'm a strong woman, okay? There's nothing I can't do. I can make food out of nothing. I can, speak with people. I can philosophize. I can go and talk to politicians. I can do everything. But that doesn't mean that I can be a dad. That doesn't mean that I can be a husband to myself. Okay. And so I wanted it. And, when I married him, he was so strong. He impressed me so much. And I remember thinking, this is the one. This is the one that can lead my family. He loves God more than he loves me. He wants to do what's right. He's going to be strong. He's going to not just protect, but he's going to teach and he's going to lead. And then As time went on, he stepped back. And that's when I felt resentful. So, Pete, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. What did you feel like with all this teaching self-government stuff as she's studying and as you're going into this training that you were going to go to?
Well, she was sharing some of the materials with me that she'd picked up at the homeschool conference, including your book, the big book. And I was reading the book and participating, and I thought I was doing a pretty good job, because I was reading what she was giving me, and I was listening to what she was telling me. But we tried other things before too. And this made a lot more sense to me than many of those things. But I wasn't sure whether it would stick with our family, but I liked the idea of it. And I wanted to support her because she's such a great mom, and she does so well with the kids.
Oh no, we lost you. Pete, we lost you. Can you hear us?
And whose view was, as long as can you hear me?
Well, again, oh, here they come.
Are you there?
Yes. So we lost you right when you said, and she was so good with the kids. And then I know you said a few sentences after that, but we missed it. Can you fill us in?
I also was raised by very permissive parents whose view was that as long as I wasn't doing anything bad, then everything was okay. And I always felt like I was inherently good. And so my view of the kids is if I attend the events that they have, and if I'm home a lot and I play with them, then I'm doing well. And so that's kind of what they need. And I thought of myself as a great dad. And everyone on the outside told me I was a great dad because they saw me at the kids' events. They saw me volunteering for things that involved the kids. But what they didn't see, and what nobody saw except for Julie and maybe the kids, was that I always in my mind thought it was so important for me to be a great dad, but I didn't realize how little I was teaching them in the home. And so the other thing I didn't realize was I thought, well, I'm doing all these things and I'm reading this stuff that she's sending me, and I'm doing some of these little meetings she's suggesting, but the meetings seem to pile up and seem to take a lot of time. And so I know subconsciously I probably gave a few eye rolls when she tried and schedule the next couples meeting or family meeting or hand me the cards to, on how to do pre-teaching or instructions. And I was thinking, I could see she was zooming on ahead, and I started to feel a little self-conscious, like I'm falling way behind. It's going to be so hard to catch up. So I wasn't really trying. I was trying less and less because it seemed like I would never catch up. And the resentment was building, and I couldn't figure out why she was so resentful about it. And it put me into a mode of almost kind of hiding from it a little bit. She jump-started me, though. She begged me to watch the BBC series that you were on several years ago. And she just said, she didn't tell me why I was watching it. She just said, watch it. And I watched it, and it was amazingly powerful. I cried so hard at the end and just thought, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And that got me, shortly after that, she asked me to go on the cruise, and I thought, well, I'm way behind, but maybe that's a good idea, because if I get there, maybe I can catch up. And that's kind of where I was going into the cruise.
I love just your story. Kind of needed to see and almost feel what would happen and that happened through the BBC show. I actually tell a lot of people, if you want your children to understand what you're going for and what kind of change you're trying to help occur in your home, if it's so as it needs to be from the other kids that are having a hard time in the home at first, but and talk about it, or show it to your spouse, or sometimes grandparents will say, well, how can I help my children because they're having a hard time as parents. What can I do? And I often tell them, show that movie to people. It doesn't go through how to follow an instruction, how to disagree appropriately, how to do an effective correction, and all those different things, but it shows the change of heart that occurs. And what I'm hearing from both of you is that, Julie, you invested a lot of time and you had a change of heart. And Pete, you invested some time and were trying to do it, but your heart hadn't fully gotten there yet. Maybe because you were busy, maybe a little bit because of your upbringing. Maybe you were feeling Julie's frustration, which then can kind of put you a little against the other person. You know, that can happen too. I remember when we spoke a little while ago and you had said that in some ways you kind of felt a little like an outsider when you didn't know everything and how it was going to go. And I really thought, you know, that is exactly it. My husband definitely was an outsider in our home.
And I had the chance at the Mastery Conference to speak with your husband at several breaks. At the first time, we just kind of talked accidentally, but then we started, I think, seeking each other out at the breaks because we related so much to each other, especially about the resentment issue. Because the first day of the Mastery course, at the end of the day, I felt awful because it was such a fantastic flow, but it exposed so many things about myself that I knew I should be doing and that I knew that I could do, but I hadn't been doing. And it struck me like a ton of bricks, or a bolt of lightning, that I can see why she's resentful, because I had this view of what I would be like as a father, and I could see the huge gap. And I told her that at the end of the day. We had coffee after the first day, and I just said, I feel horrible. I feel like a loser. This is awful. I'm so sorry, but I'm just excited about tomorrow. I mean, it was kind of like bad and good. I felt horrible, but then I felt great because I knew that I was going to be all in, that I really wanted it, because I just saw how you and your family interacted with your kids and Dave and his family and their kids, and I just was like, and I'd seen the results, and and I talked to your husband specifically, and we talked about the resentment. I said, you know, at the very beginning at one of the breaks, I said, just not sure why she's so resentful, you know, because like I'm doing this and this and this, and now I'm on this cruise. And then later that day, I said, oh, I totally understand why she's resentful. And the amazing thing was, after that first day, when she saw the change of heart, the resentment was gone. She was willing to 100% start fresh, forget all about the previous months. And she was, everything I did that might have drawn an eye roll or a stare or a comment in the past, I was not getting any of that. I was getting, like what you said. She'd be like, what can I do for you tonight to make your night easier? And I was like,
who is this person?
Yeah, this just lifted because she saw the heart change.
I just wish, you know, I don't know if men, and we're singling out men, it does seem to be more notorious that men don't want to do a structure related to parenting than women. But there, like I said, there have been women who don't want it and the husbands do. But there is nothing more attractive than being on the same page with somebody. Like, that is so attractive. In fact, at the very beginning, when you fell in love in your relationship and when you decided to get married, you already felt like you were one. Like, you felt like everything you saw eye to eye, you know? And then as your life grows and you bring new people into the mix and you take on different roles and duties and stuff like that in the family, you compart, and then you stop being on the same page. And it creates a kind of a chasm, really, in your relationship. I love that. I'm going to hold you guys right there. I'm going to let the Eggertsons tell a little bit about their backstory before they got on the same page, and then we're going to switch back to the Larsons, and I want to be prepared, to tell us what were key things that helped you get on the same page? And then we'll come back to Egerson's for that after that as well, and then I'll sum up. So the one thing about David and Melissa that, at least you can correct me if, but I kind of remember that David got on the page a little bit before Melissa did. And so that's a little bit different, right? But then maybe it went back the other way too. Could have, But I just remember there was kind of like, why would you tell us your story? How did it go?
Well, it's always been kind of a back and forth thing for us. I know she's always inspired me to be better, always. Like, that's one of the big reasons I married her. But when it did come to teaching self-government, I was kind of the one that let out a little bit on that. And that's primarily just because when our first was getting old enough that he was starting to cause some problems and we didn't know how to deal with these problems, we knew we were in trouble, and we went and studied, and we went through a bunch of different programs like Love and Logic and 1, 2, 3 Magic, and just a whole bunch of different parenting books, and finally we came across Nicholeen stuff. I mean, partially because, and this is the ironic thing, is because I actually did Nicholeen's website back before, and so I had access to her materials through that. Way before way before we finally started using it, we had access to it. And it's just funny that how that went. But we finally were like, oh, okay, maybe we should look into this thing, this teaching self-government thing. We started looking into it, and we're like, this is what we've been missing. It's like, there it is. We just knew that it was kind of what we were missing. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, quick introduction. We have 3 children. Yeah. We have a 9-year-old boy, a 6-year-old daughter, and a 3-year-old son. And I think the biggest transformational moment for me was recognizing that teaching self-government, like getting my kids to do what I wanted them to do, wasn't about how to effectively communicate with them. It was about changing me. And kind of how Nicholeen talked about Spencer being a little bit maybe resistant to change. I think I have a lot of passion, but also probably a lot of pride. And I didn't want to admit that I was the problem standing in the way of the family not being the way I wanted it to. And I just had this vision, and I just wanted it to be my way, but I didn't really have a way. David and I are both the youngest in our families, and we don't really have experience with children outside of this. And so it was incredibly frustrating trying to figure out our own system, or try to figure out how to make something of nothing. And in that process, there just came this moment of recognition where teaching self-government is about me governing myself. And I think that that's what David exemplified, what he showed. Even when he was like, hey, check out this parenting thing, I was a little bit offended. I was like, what, you think I'm not good enough? You think my parenting isn't good? Like, not like it wasn't obvious.
You think I'm not a good mom? What's going on?
It wasn't obvious. But what he did the best thing, and this is what I would recommend to everyone, is that rather than continuing to push at me, he just started changing himself. He started listening to everything. He started doing the materials. And I noticed that his emotions started shifting, that he wasn't getting emotional over tantrums, but that he wasn't playing into them, but he was calm in every situation. And I remember asking him, I was like, why are you so calm? Like, who are you? Where did this come from? And he's like, well, you might want to hear this thing, power of calm. And when I listened to that, I was like, oh, that's the ticket. And it was because he wasn't pushing it, but he was doing it himself. He, just like Nicholeen talked about, she just decided she was going on this journey, and hopefully he would join her. But she wasn't going to feel resentment towards him or anger towards Spencer. Like, when you let go of that and you just change you, because you're the only person you can change. And that was my epiphany, my revelation of like, oh, if I want to change my kids, I have to change me, and I have to be committed to myself in doing that.
That is a super powerful point. Oh, sorry, David. I'm probably cutting you off.
You're good.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, eventually we got to this point where things are starting to get a little bit better, but we just knew we needed to take it to the next level, and we just wanted to get it and wanted to understand it. And that's when we had there was a parenting mastery back then. They were called couples retreats, because we've been teaching self-government for like 5 years or something now. But this couples retreat parenting mastery event that Nicholeen was doing, we're going to make this work, because we knew that this was the answer, and we knew that we wanted to be on the same page. And we love going to events anyway, because one thing that we've learned from going to events is that every time we go to an event, we come away super connected to each other and super on the same page. And events help us to meld our minds together, because we are hearing the same information, we're digesting it the same, at the same rate. We're learning
there's
together.
not one ahead of the other, like Pete was saying, he's like, maybe I can catch up. But when you're at the same place learning the same things, it's kind of a free permission slip for whoever maybe hasn't been on that same page to get on that same page. And I mean, we learned really well. I remember it was a big sacrifice for us to go. I mean,
we had little
tried
kids.
To find someone to take the kids.
We don't have family, so we had to figure out babysitting for a few days, and that was difficult.
It was a sacrifice. Here's the thing, though. When we looked back at what is our vision, that's what the book talks about. What's your 20-year vision? We thought, well, we really want this in our life. We know that the system can help us, but we know I need to see it. I need to be kind of hands-on, talk to the people about what's going on. I want to make sure we're together and we're actually together, not just one of us thinks that we're together. And so really no price value, no amount of sacrifice could have been too much for it to have been worth it for us, because it has completely changed the tone of our home, our whole lives. And I don't see how we could have gotten to the place where we are without the experiences that we've had together. I mean, it's
best time financial investment we ever made, because we came away from that 3-day event completely changed, and we're able to jump forward. Yeah, we had already learned quite a bit even before we went to it, but going to it just really put us on the same page. It launched us. It allowed us to launch and really just kick off and go. And from then on, there was no looking back, and it was definitely a pivoting point in our family, in our relationship as a couple. That was the best thing we could have done. Now, I mean, it was just awesome.
It gave us that to hold each other accountable.
The thing with you guys was, oh yeah, that's true, because you would then mentor each other. So the things that you actually probably had the opportunity to learn more than most do. You had access, like you said, to everything. And you were going through it, and you were working really hard at it, because I remember you even saying to me, Nicholeen, I'm working for this company. I really feel like I want to learn this stuff. I want to know it. But then I remember retreat, the first one you came to. You guys have now been to so many. But I think you still even learn every time you come. But anyway.
Worth it every time.
Every time. Yeah. I want to keep coming back. I want to be renewed. I see the value. It's for us. It's like, man, if it was that powerful one time, it's so valuable to just reconnect, get us on the same page, help us figure out where we're going and where we're maybe falling short, how we can be better. It's amazing. That's my favorite way to live.
It's true. And the thing, like coming into it, David was like, well, we'll help you with it. We've done so much study. Okay. But I knew you were going to get stuff you wouldn't get any other place when you came. And then afterwards, you're like, oh my word, we were missing this. Oh, this was so pivotal for us. And I was like, yay. Finally, this couple that is in the trenches with me on teaching self-government is actually all the way there now. I mean, none of us are ever all the way, right? We're always working on it. So I want to switch back to Julie and Pete here for a minute and just tell us what are some of the key things that you get on the same page, things that maybe you've put into practice, epiphanies, things that you maybe you learned, you heard, or that you came to on your own. Because you're honestly, from the first day I met you, the first day of the parenting mastery training, to the last day that I met you, and the cruise was a little different because it was a 1 week and we had our training scheduled out a little bit differently. Your whole entire countenance had changed as a couple week for you guys, and I know that even now, how things, what you've done to change. But then also, I would love to hear a follow up, just kind of quickly, on how the family is doing since you've gotten on the same page too.
Well, I'll start and then let Julie go. But just real quickly, there was an immediate change after the conference. We were on the same page. We weren't perfect, but we were on the same page. The response of the kids was tremendous. You know, one of the things that really shook me the first day of the conference, and you alluded to it here in this webinar, about kids not being as close to their father. I always wanted to be super close to my kids, and at the conference, you made a comment at one point about, well, if you're just their friend, you know, they're going to outgrow you because you're going to make other friends. And eventually you're not going to be the coolest friend, and you're just going to be one of many friends. But if you're a true father, you'll always be their father. And that hit me hard. And so I didn't want to be in the friend zone. And I started thinking on the plane on the way back about all the inspirational sports movies that you ever see about football coaches or things, and how they're always the tough love, old-fashioned, strict guys are the ones that, you know, when people get inducted in the Hall of Fame and they say, hey, I want to never forget what my coach did when I was in high school. And it was never the people-pleasing guy who wanted to be everybody's friend. It was the tougher, sterner guy that they always remembered. And so I started...
Maybe the principled guy?
Exactly. And that made a big impact on me. And that's, I think, kind of one of the things she always wanted out of me. She also encouraged me before and during the conference to read your book, Roles, which was very helpful for me because I think we got on the same page about what everybody's job is. And
it's huge.
That's been very helpful. When we struggle with self-government, a lot of times we'll just go back to saying, well, not always number one for me, it was just power of calm. And then, you know, what do you think your job is, you know, to the child, or sometimes even to each other. So I think
we'll review it. Yeah,
getting on the same page about what our roles are. And then I think the other thing was just kind of like what you said about the conference, spending all that time together at a conference made us really think about a lot of different scenarios that often come up in our family. And so it helped us to get back ahead of the kids. You know, it made us think about the kids, get to really understand our kids better, not like what they're doing today, but how they're doing emotionally, what they're thinking. And it became easier to predict what was going to happen with them and easier to do the self-government. And so
that is enormous, Pete. I have to cut in here. That is just huge. And quite frankly, it's one that I hadn't thought of going into this, but it's huge to be ahead of the children. Because what you're talking about is coming from your parenting from a position of confidence. Okay, if you're ahead of them, then you can mentor them. If you're behind them, then you're constantly going to be on the reactive, the cleanup crew, right? So you're going to think of yourself as crisis management instead of as a mentor, a leader, a person who's pointing in the direction everybody's going. So it's huge for you to get that training and for you guys to get together on that training, because what I hear when you say we were ahead of them for once is finally we had this position of confidence going forward that we knew, well, if they do that, then we're going to do this. And if they still have a fit because they're still working on governing themselves and they're getting used to this new idea of being calm just like everyone, then we'll do this to help them get calm. And then we'll do this. And so all of a sudden there was no lost and trying to resort to emotions but that you had this mentor approach. You knew what came next. A leader cannot lead unless they know what comes next.
Yeah, and it's also fun. I mean, I was so far behind going into the conference, and then after the conference, to have moments when we're home, and I'll just offhandedly say, "Oh yes, our son is going to do this. He's having this kind of day, and here's what's going to happen next." And then it happens, and I just say it matter of factly, and don't say, "Oh my gosh, I got one right." You know, it's like yeah, that's my role, is to understand that, to predict it, and I did it. And then her view of that is really like, you know, the resentment's already gone, but that would kill it if there was any there, because then it's not like me saying, "Hey, give me a gold star because I finally did something right." It's just kind of like, yeah, that's my job.
Like we're seeing the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. Here we are, we're looking at this, we're seeing this, we know what's coming, we're preparing each other, you know, and so you're going forward as a team. That is so beautiful. That is so beautiful. Julie, do you want to add something? What were some of the things that you felt like were powerful for you that helped you get on the same page?
Well, I think he started it with the biggest thing was, of course, the engaging his heart was obviously the biggest thing on the very first day, because it went from being a checklist that he had to be reminded of to, oh my goodness, this is so important, and I see why this is important now, and I can see how this is going to benefit our family, and what he got a vision for what our family would look like. And so that was just huge coming out of that. But I think one of the things that helped us to get on the same page that I really didn't realize I needed is I always said I wanted him to be the leader of the family, but I also prided, and I'm using that word very intentionally, prided myself on the fact that he could travel and I could hold the family together, and that I could single mom it, as I called it. I could single mom it, and I could lead, and I could hold it all together. And there was true pride in that, like actual pride. And so even though I wanted him to lead, when it came right down to it, did I really fully allow him to lead was a question. And so one of the ways that we got together is that I would recognize I need to talk this through with my husband. This scenario has come up. He's traveling, and I always prided myself before on being the one wife that never called him from home. I never called him home. I never called him with scenarios. And sometimes that has its place, but there was a time after we got back from the conference and I went, I need him. I need to talk this through. I need to make sure that I'm doing what it is that he would. And I also just needed to kind of talk through the teaching self-government, like literally just have a friend look to each other as a mentor to kind of check each other. And I think that ended up being gigantic for me as a gift. And I didn't realize that I was actually blocking it from happening. But talking through scenarios, getting encouragement. There was a time not too long ago, for the first time, I called him and I said, I actually need you to come home a little early today. If it's at all possible. Before, I mean, it was like, if you're at tennis, I'm not even calling him. That's too important. But this was, now I'm like, you know what? You really need to come home. We need to deal with this as a family, and we need to kind of have a couple sit-down meetings with your son. It's kind of important. So, and, he knows that I'm very respectful of him. So that was, I just keep on coming back more and more to things that I needed to change. It just keeps on coming back of how I need to say is myself.
Yeah, I'm hearing you say, because there's some people who may err on the side of, I don't want to handle it, you handle it, I'll call you, you handle it, you handle it, you handle it. And you're not talking about that. You're saying, I could handle anything, so much so that you shut him out.
Right.
Because you just took it all. And I have to say, I get that, Julie, because I did the same thing for a while. When I was in that 2-year period and my husband was working 2 jobs and going to school and stuff, I just went, I can do anything. Look how big my capacity is. I'm just going to keep growing this capacity and I'll just go, 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 go. But then there was a point where I had shut him so far out, and I realized that I had to deliberately try to find ways to bring him back in. And not have him be that outsider, as Pete calls it, you know?
He kind of hinted at the fact that, you know, the whole friend zone thing. And I took some pride in the fact that, look, I'm the stricter parent, and they have, I don't know, they had a little bit more respect, and, you know, they had this camaraderie with me, even though I was the one who might say no to them. And he was the, you know, it was kind of an ongoing thing. Dad always says yes, Mom says no, you know. And so
You're the heavy.
I didn't realize, I thought it hurt my feelings, but I actually had a lot of pride in that. And so I think what there was just a lot of things that going to the seminar really, for that week, really helped me to understand about myself, that I wasn't all a bag of chips as a parent and as, you know, as a spouse, that I might do every single, and I mean, I did every, fully built a tree in your implementation system, but that doesn't mean much if it really takes 2.
And I'm hearing you say that one big thing that helped you unify with him was figuring out how to humble yourself, you know? Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing, you know, because that means your heart is then changing. So not only did his heart have to change, and not only did he have to learn skills, you had learned all these skills. You had, you know, you had become fluent in teaching self-government language, but at the end of the day, you had to practice some humility in order to reach back to him.
Correct.
And so that's huge.
I think just one quick comment, because I know we're short on time, but one thing that I think for all 3 of us couples that are speaking, for everyone who's listening, in each case, there was one person who really wanted to do self-government, and they got calm and humbled themselves and just went forward and welcomed the other spouse in. If she hadn't gone forward with it, like she did, and just stayed with it, you know, I don't know if I ever would have come along, even though intellectually I knew it was a good thing. So, you know, I think if you're wondering, I can't get anywhere with my spouse, one thing I would suggest would be humble, calm, and just do it.
And I have one more, actually, is praise. When you're praising, it's a part of the Teaching Self-Government program of how important, and that was hard for me. That was hard for me, still is hard for me to implement. I literally have an index card in my kitchen counter that says pre-teach and praise. And I am challenged myself to keep up a tally, because it'll just go right out of my head again to praise. But when I'm doing it with my kids, I naturally have changed my heart that it comes his way, which then really gets us on the same page. I mean, it makes our ability to dialogue with each other so much better. So it is going forward, and it's going forward with changing your heart, but also sending that praise out to your spouse.
That's really powerful, Julie. Really powerful. In fact, my husband has started saying to me over the years, just periodically, he would say, honey, I need praise. And I'd be like, oh, okay, good. Like, because I'm probably very similar to you. I just get going. I'm like the steamroller. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's do this. And I'm highly, effective and just handling all the little things. But then sometimes if there's something that's going to fall for me too, it's going to be praise. That's going to be the thing that would fall. So that's really beautiful. Okay. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing. If you had to sum up in maybe 1 or 2 sentences only, what you think life feels like now, comparison to before you got on the same page, how would you say? What would you describe it as? Oh no, you went frozen. Ah. Okay, we might have to ask that question again in a second because we lost Pete and Julie. They're frozen. Okay, we'll get back to you. Oh, there you go. Did you now try it again because you were frozen?
I would literally use the word unified. That's it. I mean, I know that's the name of your book, but it really is. We feel so much more calmer and unified. It's everything we really want it to be. And like you said, it's not perfect and we are very new, but it's something to come back to again and again.
And my life is more peaceful. One of the benefits of the course too is I went back to getting off of like reading news on the internet and things and spending time reading books. And I feel more peaceful and intellectually stimulated, and just learned a lot about getting back to some basics in life.
That.
So
I like that, intellectually stimulated. That is a really cool thing to find out because I've never thought about it like that before. You have so much more to talk about, and it's so much more meaningful, isn't it? All right, we just lost Melissa. She went somewhere, but we're going to switch over to David and Melissa. Hopefully she comes back to you, David. Yay, there you are. You made it back just in time. Okay, so I know we've got a teeny bit over what I advertised this would be, but I really want to give you a full experience here. We're going to kind of do a sum up. But David and Melissa, I would love it if you tell us what were some of the key things that helped you get on the same page. If you were to sum up, you can list them. You can share some experiences, and then we'll have the same question. How do you feel like it is now compared to, either within yourselves or within the whole family? So go ahead, whoever wants to go first.
There's a number of things. I think a lot of it's already been said, where just push forward and implement what you're learning. Try to lead by example, and really just, be that example, but don't be spiteful about it, right? Because that comes across in your tone as you talk to each other. And if there's spite in any way toward your spouse, it just pushes them away further, right? It's not going to help to have that. Yeah, they might feel that, oh, they want me to do that. But that actually, for some reason, there's this human nature reaction to that. If somebody's wanting us to do something, we actually do the exact opposite. We resist. Resist. So we just
it's pride.
Yeah, and so doing that, and then when the time is right, and you just feel like, you know what, right now I can say something, or I can just make sure it's in the right tone. Tone is so important, and that using questions is often better than saying something straight out. Just saying, hey, sweetheart, is it, would you like to have a better relationship with your kids, or would you like the kids to be able to follow your instructions? Is that something you want? Rather than being like, well, really, if you would just use this system that I'm doing, then the children would listen to you, right? There's a huge tone difference there. And so using questions more with your spouse, and that'll help a lot. And then, if you can go and do things together, have regular dates. We already said.
I was going to say that. You're stealing mine now.
Yeah. With regular dates, making sure you're going out and spending time together, and not just spending time. Don't just go to a movie and sit there next to each other. Go somewhere where you can actually talk to each other, and have your couples meetings, but have dates as well where you can talk about things. And if you can make it work, go do a 3-day. Go to one of these events, and make it work. I know Nicholeen has, for these parenting masteries, she allows people to do payment plans. She allows people, it's a sacrifice, but it's super worth it. It made all the difference for Melissa and I.
Absolutely. If I were to add anything to that, it would pretty much be what David just said, is that having quality experiences together really shows your love and compassion for the other person. And so if maybe you're not on the same page right now, one of you maybe isn't feeling like you're as valuable in the marriage, or you're bringing as much, or as connected maybe. And so having experiences together where, yeah, either you're going on dates or you're having family activities, which is really powerful, or even couples meetings where you can connect, where you can praise and share the positive things about each other. And especially for us, I mean, what really couples retreat. And the reason that was so powerful was because it wasn't coming from me or from him. We weren't trying to tell the other person, you're doing it right, you're doing it wrong. But there was a third party. It was like Nicholeen saying, presenting these ideas that we could both then accept and look to each other like, hey, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? Versus one person being right and one person being wrong. And so it didn't pit us against each other. In fact, that's why it unified us, is because it was presented by somebody else. And so one of us, it didn't make one of us the good guy and one of us the bad guy.
That's a huge thing. That's enormous. In fact, if there's one perk you get out of coming to a training thing like that, it is that you don't have to sum up a whole book for somebody else who's already like, here we go, another thing, she's going to tell me all about her studies, and I don't have time to do all the stuff and that she wants me to do, and now she's going to think I'm bad if I don't, and there's all these things that a person starts feeling on the inside that you don't even have to feel that way when I'm the one standing in front of the group saying, well, this is actually what it looks like when you're driving your children away from you. This is what it looks like. And your spouse doesn't have to tell you. And that is, that's so good, because that's the hard thing. Ultimately, in the end, Spencer and I did have training. We had training too. It was 3 weeks of going every night to a training. So he did have something to fall back on. He got lazy. He stepped out of it. He didn't want to do it for a while. But ultimately, he did have some training in there, and he knew that it wasn't just an idea I had concocted. And that helped me to get it going in our family as well, even though I had to go alone for a little while. We've said a lot of wonderful things here. Just to answer that last question, what would you say that it feels like, or maybe what would you say for you, for David and Melissa, what would you say you feel like as a parent in comparison to before you really, were unified together? Oh, we need sound from you, Melissa. There you go.
I would say that I feel empowered. That would be the word for me, is that I feel like I have the skills and tools. And the biggest thing is that, we're both on the same page, and it came from someone else, like I was saying. So it wasn't one person or the other, but ultimately self-government comes down to you. And so if you have a spouse that's not on board, they're not governing themselves. But you get to show them that by you governing yourself, and then you both personally become empowered, and then together you're unified. For me, I just feel like it is more about me than I realized, and we're all invested in ourselves. Like that's a pretty great why.
Mm-hmm. Great.
That's a good one. David, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Or that's for you too. Okay.
So let's wrap it up.
Okay, awesome. Well, so we've had a lot of talk about the implementation course, the parenting mastery course, the ones that we do for 3 days. And before we look them up here, I just want to mention we actually do have one of those coming up. So on February 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, we mastery that's going to be happening in Hideaway Valley. This will be the only parenting mastery that happens until the fall. We do 2 of them a year. We guarantee we'll do 2. Your Nicholeen's schedule works. That's why we only do them twice a year, because other times I'm speaking and doing so many other things. I can't break away to do 3 days. Quite frankly, doing 3 solid days in a row is about all my body can take. It's very draining on me too. So anyway, if you don't come, in February, you can join us again in fall, which will be probably November again. When we would do that. So it's a little ways off. If we've got some space, we'd love for you to join us, the one in February on the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd. And David, I don't know if you can put something in a chat, or if there's a chat on this, or somewhere where people could go to. But you can just go to teachingselfgovernment.com, go to the events tab, and it should be one of the first things listed that you can sign up for. The early bird pricing. So you get a little bit of a discount on it if you sign up within the next week or so, which would be really valuable. And like David said, we take payments for people. Anybody who needs this, who needs to be there, we will work with you. Like, you guys, I don't make 1 cent for doing these things. We take the money and we put it to the lodge, we put it to the food. Any of the money that comes to Teaching Self-Government for the training just goes to make more trainings possible, and goes to making, the products, the books, the things, and to help me travel to the UN and the different places where I have to speak. I don't actually take a paycheck from Teaching Self-Government on a regular basis. And so that is, in case you're wondering if I care about making a lot of money, I don't. I just want you guys to have what you need. So if you feel like I totally need this, I wonder if they could work with me. I mean, just contact us, and we'd be happy to help you. We want the people who need to be there to be there. This is really more about a mission for all of us, and than it is for anything else. Anyway, I just want to sum up some of the thoughts that I have about how to get on the same page, and then some of the thoughts that have been shared. So one of the big things that I feel like needs to be said is, if you read the book, if you and your spouse both read the book, you're both equally invested, or you take the implementation course or something online and you're equally invested, everything in all the stuff that is taught is meant to lead toward unity. It's meant to lead toward being on the same page, having your children on the same page as you, and having spouses on the same page with each other. I mean, it's integrated in all of that. So going through it and making sure that you actually do all of it. Don't omit the meetings. Don't leave out times where you can talk with each other. Don't go, well, making a family vision seems kind of silly, Don't just leave something out because maybe it's not in your comfort zone. If you do everything that is suggested, it really does help get you on the same page, believe it or not. And then the other thing too is, as you're going along, keep those communications really strong, and don't expect yourselves to be perfect. I think that's another thing that happens is parents will start something and then they think, oh, great, well, we read that book and we went for a good week on it and now everybody doesn't care. So this must not be for us. Well, then everybody, falls off the wagon, and they're not going to care about, if somebody feels like they need to see results so instantly like that. But go into it with this idea. This is something that is like a pursuit. It's something we go after and we go after again, and we fine tune it again and again and again. It's not something that we perfect just straight out of the chute. It doesn't usually happen like that. It is easier if you've had some training and stuff like that. The things that were mentioned that I've written on my list, I don't know what yours says, but one is have quality experiences. It sounds to me like both the Larsons and the Eggersons had quality experiences together, and that made a huge difference for them. We heard praising was a big deal, focusing on the positive with each other. And I love how, I think it was Pete who brought up, have full-time, be a full-time dad, not just a dad in public, not just a dad at the games, right? And when you're a full-time player in the family, you can't help but end up unifying more together. And I thought that was wonderful. A huge one mentioned by every single person here is sacrifice. You've got to make the sacrifice. You've got to take the time to actually do the study. If only one of you knows the philosophy and the other one thinks it's just manipulation techniques so that they can get the kids out of their hair, it's going to always be hard to have the change of heart required to be on the same page. we talked about not being in the friend zone with our children, but I also feel like you don't want to be stuck in the friend zone just with your husband and wife either. When you're really a husband and a wife, then that means you really truly care and understand and correct each other and motivate each other, and you're moving in a direction. You're not just having a little bit of fun together from time to time. And then how important roles is, and look at that role as husband and wife. And whether they're on the same page with you yet or not, the way you see your role will influence then your tone, which was talked about. There were so many great things shared. I can't even sum them all up. But and I wish we could have time to take questions, because I'm pretty sure we could have volumes and volumes of wisdom here. But we just, quite frankly, don't have the time. I already went over time by a half hour. Anyway, sorry about that. But I didn't want to stop all of this great stuff. And clearly we didn't schedule enough time when I originally thought it would only be a 45-minute cast. But I hope that you will resolve somehow this year to get on the same page, even if it just means changing your own heart first, which is what we've heard is the most important thing. So keep learning, keep growing, don't give up. And if you can, come join us. It's quicker. The quickest through the 3-day parenting mastery training. Do any of you else have anything to say to the group? David, you looked like you did, no? Okay. Thank you all for joining us. You, Pete and Julie and David and Melissa, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight. I hope you have a wonderful, happy New Year, and I hope that you find a way to unify more in your family, and maybe even you'll find some time in your schedule to join us a month from now. God bless. Okay. Stay on, everybody. I hope